A lot just to absorb from that commodity space overnight, a real mixed bag. I can see copper up about 0.5%, but at the same time a mixed read on oil. Light crude up 1%, Brent down 1%, the gold price down 0.8. What did you make of all the action? It seems a little confusing.
It was certainly a mixed bag, and I guess just starting off with the industrial metals, we have seen a bit of recent weakness in the industrial metals. In fact, if we have a look at copper in New York, this is what it looks like over the past year. And if we have a look at copper, you can see that since the peak in September recently, we've seen a fall of around about 5%. It's the same for the other industrial metals. We've seen aluminium prices also down by about 5%, zinc prices down by about 3.2% over the last month. Overnight, the London's Metals Exchange was a little bit mixed. We did see lead and zinc trading higher. Copper was flat, while aluminium and nickel were trading lower. But then in New York, we did see copper prices rising by 0.4%. But of course, industrial metals is all about China. China's the largest user of these industrial metals, so we'll be watching that China growth story very carefully. But in terms of the safe havens, it was a little bit confusing. Usually when we do see geopolitical conflict, as we are seeing between Israel and Hamas, usually we see things like gold increasing in price, but we saw gold and silver prices actually down by 0.9%, and that was on sign of some weakness in terms of demand from, I guess, China investors, as well as people looking at jewelry in that third quarter, seeing demand softening off by around about 11%. So that put some downward pressure on the safe havens. Gold and silver both were down by about 0.8%. And then we come to oil. We've seen oil prices now down 3 out of the last 4 sessions, despite the geopolitical conflict that we are seeing at the moment. This time a report showing that crude inventories in the US are at the highest level in 3 months, putting a bit of downward pressure on oil. So altogether a mixed picture, and of course we can't forget iron ore prices, something that we're pretty obsessed with, especially for that material space. And we did see prices strengthen overnight, just over that 122 US a mark area.
Okay, so how does that set us up for trade today, Julia?
Well, if we have a look at the Australian market in the week to date so far, it's actually been quite a difficult one for the Aussie market. We're down by about 2.5%. We have a look at the leads. The US market, it's been down now for the 3rd consecutive session. It was down by 0.2% overnight. And in fact, if we have a look at how the US session has performed since the US elections, we've actually seen the Dow Jones Industrial Average down in 6 out of the last 7 sessions. So unfortunately, not a good lead coming through, although the losses were quite slight. If we have a look at that, what markets are watching at the moment, we did see the Eurozone slipping into recession. We're also seeing Israeli troops. There are reports that they are moving towards the Gaza border, so watching that situation very closely. And of course, it's AGM season, and there's another raft of AGMs going on today. We'll be watching Amalgamated Holdings, Jindawi Metals, Kathmandu, Cash Converters, Goodman Group, ResMed, just to name a few of those going on today. We have a look at that material space. We did see a weaker session. BHP was trading down 0.8% in London and also down 0.8% in New York. So we could see a little bit of downward pressure coming through from those big miners. And if we have a look at some of the American depository receipts, the ADRs, and how they performed overnight, well, we did see BHP and Rio trading down lower. We have a look at Westpac and Telstra. The losses were very slight. They're down by about 0.1%. And ResMed was actually up by 0.4%. So it does look like another day where those defensives are going to outperform and shine on the Australian share market, but it does look like we are going to finish off this week with a loss of around about 2.5%.
Julia, I just wondered if you could give us some more details ahead of that Goodman Group AGM. This is the integrated property group, which is now looking at more of a focus in China. What are you listening out for there?
I think there'll be a lot of happy shareholders at this AGM today. We've seen the stock price up by 45% in the last year, and Goodman seems to have a very strong development pipeline. If we have a look at what this company does, it really develops industrial assets, and then it either feeds them into its funds platform or it takes ownership of those assets and derives an income from those assets. We've seen a pretty clear development pipeline and a de-risking as well, as it enters into joint ventures in places like Brazil. And Brazil is seen as an attractive area because it's seen as offering greater returns in terms of return on equity than more mature markets like Australia, like the US, as well as the UK. So quite exciting what's happening in terms of Brazil, in terms of China and Japan. The pipeline there should start to deliver returns. And of course, Goodman has also moved into the largest logistics market in the world, and that's the US market. We will be watching commentary about the UK market. We know that this has been a weak area for Goodman Group, so I think shareholders will be keeping a close eye on the UK market at any commentary coming out around that. But altogether, I think some pretty happy shareholders, despite that capital raising that we saw not too long ago. The development pipeline is strong, and that should continue to deliver some strong returns for Goodman Group shareholders. We've seen the stock up by 45% over the last